So, why would you want to work with your own shame? Well, I'll tell you, because it is probably the most important social emotion you have. And without your own shame, you will be directionless and you will be very, very vulnerable to the messages, the needs, the wants, the desires, the problems, the foibles, and the shaming of others. Without your own shame, without knowing how to work with your own shame, you will be lost. Hello and welcome. I'm Carla McLaren, and in this episode of the Off-Ramp Project, I want to look at how to work with shame. In episode 12, we looked at reclaiming your shame, because so much of the way that we've learned about shame is by being shamed, and that's not the same at all. In fact, I would almost say it's the opposite of developing your own internal moral compass, which is what your shame sort of watches out for. It helps you live up to the things that you have decided and agreed within yourself are valuable things to do and to have and to be, such as being an ethical person, being a moral person, being a helpful person, being a strong and intelligent person, being a person who doesn't just speak out of turn or tell tales on others. If you're a religious person, it would be living up to the tenets of your religion, the ones that you agree with, hopefully, not all of them if your religion has some trouble up in there. But basically, it's how you form and reform your moral center. It's how you live up to your ethics and your values and your morals. In dynamic emotional integration, we look at shame as an incredibly important part of helping you set boundaries. Now, anger is the boundary setter from the outside. So if people step to you and challenge your values and your sense of self and your moral structure, if that is coming from the outside, your anger should in some way step up and say, hey, this is an entirely different person who has an entirely different reality and an entirely different set of values, and you don't just get to jump on it, okay? Now, of course, some people use their anger in violent ways. Some people don't use their anger very well at all. So a lot of us see anger and boundary setting as problems in and of themselves because we don't understand anger. All we've seen is how people use their anger. And most people haven't really been taught or trained or aren't even aware that there are options in working with your anger. So what we think about anger is pretty much exactly the troubling situation we find ourselves in with shame, where we likely can't identify when people are working well with shame, just the same as we can't identify when people are working well with anger if it doesn't look like violence, right? When people are working well with shame, they have a strong conscience. They are good relationship partners. They can be relied on. They are ethical. They're moral. They're straightforward. They're easy to be with. You can rely on their word. They're people of their word, right? And I don't think anybody would say, okay, there's a person who's working well with their shame. Because the way that we know shame is the same we know anger, which is having it thrown at us. And that's not anger, and that's not shame. That's someone else using their shame as an attack or as an avoidance or any of a number of behaviors that make shame look like a bad emotion or make anger look like a bad emotion. But shame is crucial. It's essential to the structure of your moral fiber. And the reason I called this episode Working with Your Own Shame is because a huge part of individuating and evolving as a person and growing into your own self instead of just an amalgamation of everybody you've ever met a crucial aspect of that is deciding what is a moral and ethical approach for you, for this person in this body who's lived this life. What are my morals? What are my ethics? What makes me feel good? What makes me feel bad? What is difficult for me that I want to work on? And what is difficult for me that I can just let go, right? It's articulating yourself in this world. One of my favorite books was written by Joan Grant, and it's called The Eyes of Horus. And it is a story about a time in ancient Egypt when a great deal of evil was afoot. And there were a group of people called the Eyes of Horus who were kind of secretly creating a groundswell to change the political future of Egypt. And they had to do it in secret because, it was an authoritarian government, and the pharaoh was kind of out of his mind. And it's a fascinating story about creating ground up social movement in the face of repression. And so everybody's, kind of secretly doing this, but also living their lives. And two of the main characters are a brother and sister, and they go to meet someone who's not really aware of what they're doing, but is very aware that they are such different people. And she says, and this is not a faithful recollection because I don't have the book in front of me, but she said, so many people, their souls are like the streets after a parade, filled with all manner of things that other people have discarded. But you two, you are yourselves, right? She saw something in them that wasn't just, a psyche full of garbage and shaming messages and stuff you picked up from social media and whatever, and some things your grandma said. And, it's just a jumble that even you don't understand the context of what's going on within your soul. It's like the streets after a parade. And I think for a lot of people, if they don't know what shame is, if they don't know that they need to work with their own shame, they would have that parade street kind of a psyche with all sorts of messages popping up. You don't know where they came from. And so the work with shame is to understand what you agreed to, because shame holds you to your moral and ethical agreements. That's its job. That's what it does. One of our dynamic emotional integration professionals, Sarah Alexander, calls shame the loyal assistant, because it only assists you in standing up and living up to the things you've already agreed to. I call it the loyal contract administrator too, because there's a way in which you sign a contract with morals and ethics that you agree to, even if you don't remember that you agreed to them. And the kind of streets after a parade vision that book gave me, many of us are walking around with contracts that we agreed to that we don't even remember we agreed to, that we don't know why they're there, that if we thought about it, we never would have agreed to them in the first place, right? And a lot of it is shaming messages and controlling messages from the outside. So you need to be, big boys don't cry. Don't talk back to me, young lady. I wish that you could be more like your sister. Too bad. No one will love you until you're the perfect weight. Lord. Your physical beauty is a part of your value in the world. Your physical beauty or not is a part of your value in the world. Your body says everything about you. And if your body isn't perfect, neither are you. Do you know the kinds of messages that kind of surround us, especially from advertising and social media? Oh my word. I call I call Instagram shame central, right? Everyone wants to show you their perfect, Instagrampy images. And these are curated images. There's a reason that I own studio lights, y'all. There's a reason I don't use studio lights here, because I don't want to give you this perfectionistic picture of me that says, I've got it going on more than you do, therefore, right? My hair is, I do my hair, but it has its own ideas about how life goes, right? I don't want to present this perfection picture of me. I don't have a perfect microphone. I don't have a perfect studio setup, right? This is my office. There's an overhead light. It's not perfect. And exactly is what I say to you. It's not perfect, because nothing is that's alive. And I know that there is a danger to this, because it could say, I don't understand what it is to look perfect and speak perfectly and have perfect everything. So therefore I'm less professional than the next guy. Well, you know what? That's okay. I'll go along with my ethics and my morals in the way that I want to be in the world. And if it works for you, great. And if it doesn't, do you know how many podcasts there are? I think there's more podcasts than there are humans on the planet. Okay, go find another one if you need perfect. Yeah, do that. Do that with my blessings. Fly me free. Okay, so when you are in contact with me, I want you to be in contact with me and not like a presentation of me. Of course, I'm doing presentation of self, because I'm not wearing pajamas, and I've got my dark circles whited out, things like that. So I don't look like I'm really, really tired, but I don't want my presentation of self to get in the way between our relationship. And that's always true of me. And I'm not changing that because I have a writing career and a podcast and whatever. I'm not doing it. And if that means I'm not going to hit the heights of fame and fortune, that's okay. That's okay. What did Jesus say? What if a man gain the whole world yet lose his own soul? That's a good message. That's a good message that I will take from our friend Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. That's a message that I'm willing to sign because I've agreed to it, right? I've looked at Jesus and I'd said, you know what? That one's a keeper. That one's a keeper. There's other things that Jesus was thought to have said. There's other things that the Bible says that I'm like, nope, that is not a moral value that I'm willing to uphold. Sorry, pal, nope. I know I'm being silly right now, but this is the way to work with your own shame. You find what this soul, your soul in your body, and this time with these parents and these ancestors and this work in the world and these skills and this creativity and this intellectual uptakeability and this way of wanting to live and these artistic abilities, find who you are. Your shame can help you do that because it can help you feel which messages are workable and livable and appropriate and which messages aren't. And the way it does that is through pain. I'm sorry, but there are ways that there's messages. Like a lot of people say, Carla, how can you possibly stand up for shame? It's the worst emotion in the world. And people tell us we shouldn't have shame. We should only have guilt because guilt is blah, blah, blah. Nope. Nope. That's not how it goes. That's not how it goes. What people are talking about is the shame that's put on you that's inappropriate, that is not of this time, that is not workable for you. What they're talking about is shame that should bring you some pain because it's not yours. Let me give you an example. And I've said this example before, so I apologize if you've heard it. A shaming message that I am willing to sign a contract with is I will floss my teeth every night, right? Flossing isn't easy. Doing it every night isn't easy, but I like to have my teeth. And so I'm going to do it. And so that's something I've written down. My shame, my loyal contract administrator, puts that in my list of contracts and watches me, right? So I'm watching this really good, this really good Korean show. It's about Grim Reapers, and I just need to keep watching it, right? I started the first one thinking, am I going to like this? And then I'm 3 in, right? It's 11:15, and I'm ready to go into the fourth one. And my shame says, Carla, what? Are you going to floss? Or are you going to keep watching this and then you're going to make excuses about why you can't floss because you're too tired and you have to get up at 7 tomorrow morning? And I say to my shame, God, but I go do it, right? Because my shame is reminding me about this thing that I agreed to, that I am screwing around, right? Watching this show that's really good and missing out on the things that the promises I have made to myself. That's when shame and I are working on a contractual message, a message from the outside, from dentists, right? I didn't make this up. Flossing, I wouldn't make that up, but dentists did. So I'm agreeing with that message from the outside world. And I can live up to it unless I'm screwing around on Netflix, right? So that's how it works when my shame reminds me about a message that I am, a job that I'm shirking, right? It's like, Miss Carla, what did we agree to? So it's like one of your best friends, and I also call it your pest friends, right? My pest friend shame told me to get up, so I did. And then I realized I've been sitting for 3 hours and I need to stretch and it's time to turn it off. I can watch it tomorrow. Do you know what I mean? I've broken that TV coma that I was in. Thank you, shame. Now, let's say that I have a shaming message I picked up and I don't know I picked it up because I never check my messages. Okay. And it is, no one will love you until you're perfect. And some poor soul comes to love me, and my shame goes on a freaking bender. My shame goes cracker dog. It goes cattywampus. It comes at me with the force of 7 garbage trucks full of garbage. And it's going to tell me all the ways that I am not perfect. And it is going to be so painful. It is going to be so awful. And I'm probably going to end that relationship with this dear soul who's trying to love me. And it can't happen. It can't happen because this message is in the way. And what I have noticed is that this message will cause so much pain in me. And I will turn towards shame and go, you're the problem. I should only feel guilt. I should never feel shame, right? And the thing is, that shame is the exact same shame. The exact same shame that's telling me, Carla, don't watch the 4th episode. Get up and floss, right? Get up and floss. Because the message is simple. I've agreed to it. It's doable. It's of the present moment. It is a good message. And my shame is just annoying enough, just pesty enough to get me to get up off my butt and go do what I agreed to do, right? That's the exact same shame as the shame that is battering me because I'm not perfect, because there's no way to be perfect. That message was toxic. That shame feels toxic because it is being the loyal contract administrator of a contract that is disgusting. The shame isn't disgusting. The contract is, right? And we have a practice called burning contracts, which you would think that is so silly. But what I've noticed in working with emotions is English isn't their first language. Whatever your first language is, that is not your emotions' first language. Your emotions understand whatever languages you speak, but their first language is image, nuance, subtlety, movement, emotion, right? The way the sun shifts and all of a sudden you see another thing. Emotions speak in undercurrent, in dance, in drama, in paintings, in music, in poetry, right? Emotions are incredibly imaginal and incredibly, they're imaginative. And so what I've found with working with emotions is it's important to work in the imaginal realm. It is important to work in the language they speak. And we all spoke before we developed whatever languages we speak now. But it's the language underneath language. That is the language that emotions speak. They can also speak your languages. They're smart. But if you want to really, really affect your emotions, really work with them in a deep and focused way, you work imaginally. And so the imaginal practices that my emotions help me develop or help me choose and modify are ones where you use your imaginative capacities, you use your imaginal skills, and because you're speaking in their language, your emotions are listening. And so we do this burning contracts practice, and I'll link you to, let's see, I think I have a video on YouTube with burning contracts, and I also have a written form on my website. Also, it's in the Language of Emotions book, a big old book. It's in the Language of Emotions workbook, a little guy that's easier. And you can learn how to do burning contracts. It's like the specific healing practice for shame or any shaming messages that don't work. Not shame. No. It's the specific practice to relieve yourself of shaming messages that are painful and horrible, right? Remember the shaming message about flossing my teeth. Being told to floss my teeth didn't hurt me. I was annoyed because I was ready to watch the 4th episode, right? But it didn't hurt me. It didn't fill me with horror and despair and the sense that I was never, ever going to be able to find love, like that other message did. That message of no one will love you until you're perfect, that is abuse. And my poor shame, my poor contract administrator, my poor loyal assistant had to batter me behind that contract. That contract needs to go. It needs to go. And burning contracts helps you do that. Now, it's not something that works like boom right away. Sometimes a contract like that is so old, it's so ingrained, it's so a part of the way that you see the world, you're going to need to burn those contracts a number of times. But what I can tell you from, I'm going to say 50 years of experience, is that those contracts will go and your shame will be so grateful to get them the heck out. Go. Get out. Go darken someone else's door. Or how about no? How about don't darken anyone else's door with that horrendous message, right? Because it hurts you. So one of the ways you can tell that you've got inauthentic, inappropriate, external shaming messages is that it hurts. Because you already have a moral structure, you already have a core of ethics, and they are going to react. They are going to respond and react when you've got a shaming message that is absolute garbage. That's how you know. Shame that you have chosen, sometimes it's painful. Let's say one of yours is, I'm going to be kind to people and I'm never going to punch down. And so you're just in a crappy mood one day, you're tired, something happened, you're just in a snappy, crappy mood, and you are unkind about someone and you punch down. Your shame is going to want to talk to you about that nonsense you just did, and that'll be painful, all right? Because it should be painful, because that's something that you agreed not to do, and you'll feel bad about it, and you should feel bad about it, because that was an agreement that you made consciously and intentionally. It wasn't thrown at you from some weird magazine or from some, social media meme or something that was trying to control you. This was something that's valuable to you, that you don't punch down, that you're kind to people, and you just broke your own rules. That's a different kind of pain, right? That's a different kind of pain than the one where your shame is just going to be pelting you with all the ways you're not perfect, therefore you cannot be loved, right? It's different. Shame, even getting up when I wanted to go to the 4th episode of my show, that was a little bit of pain, but it's pain that I grow from because it's pain that I agreed to, right? If I'm fooling around, something needs to call me back to my ethics and my plans and what makes me proud of myself. Yeah. Something needs to call me back. So thank goodness for shame. Thank goodness. With burning contracts, what you do is, I usually do it imaginally. I just imagine a contract in front of me and I project what's going on because you may have heard in my podcast that I have some difficulty with language and I need to use a lot of what are called fluency generators. Fluency generators are right, they help me keep my words flowing. And so for me, even though I'm a writer and I live in this world of words, it's much quicker for me to do things in images. So I tend to do almost all of my work in the actual imaginal realm of imagining things and moving things like you would put up your contract, you would project what's going on onto it, and then I would roll up my contract. It's fake, right? But with my hands, I'm rolling it up and I'm tying it and I'm throwing it away and I'm burning it. All of that feels real to me because my imagination and my language below language is very strong. For some people, their imagination, they haven't had to develop the kind of imagination that I have had to because of all my language difficulties. So they would need to write it down. That would feel much better for them. That would just make so much more sense, right? But as they're writing it down, they're in that place of creation. They're in that place where emotions live. And as they're writing down the yucky contract, and I would be like, I will never be loved until I'm perfect. Perfection requires that I, do this, that, and the other thing. If people try to love me when I'm not perfect, it means the love isn't real, right? I mean, just all the toxic, nasty things that you picked up somewhere, Lord knows where, right? You write it all down and then you roll up that real piece of paper. And I always like to have a sense of like tying it with twine so that all of the words and all of the images, if you're working imaginally, are now obscured. I can't tell what I wrote. I can't tell what I projected onto that imaginary thing. And that's a really important part of the practice because your emotions need to see you close it up. Your emotions need to see you throw it away from yourself, out of your personal space. Goodbye. This is not what I want to do anymore. And your emotions need to see you burn it. Or I like to throw it up and boom, take it down with a rifle. I might put it I might bomb it. I might, depending on what my emotional energy is around the contract and the one of no one will love you until you're perfect. I mean, I'm talking the 1812 overture of bombs. All right. There's cannons, there's bombs, that's getting blown up. And that, for some people, they might want to put it in a river full of grief and wash it down. They might want to put it on a funeral pyre and watch it burn. I tend to go toward bombs, okay? There's a lot of stuff in my psyche that needed to be blowed up real good. And so I had fun with it. But as my emotions watch me doing that, right? And as I'm looking off toward the place where I threw the contract, my emotions are like, okay, she's serious about this. This is something that she doesn't want anymore. And so the next time that idea comes up in me, because if it's an old idea, it's going to want to come up and try to make some trouble again. My shame's going to say, hold on. My shame's not going to go automatically. into that behavior anymore, because I have worked in the language of emotions, in that imaginal creative language, so that they can see that I am trying as hard as I can to change what's happening, to say no to it, to say, no, I choose something else now, right? And so that's the way to work with your own shame, is if the shame is incredibly painful and the pain has no purpose, right? The pain of getting me up off my butt to go and floss, that pain has a purpose. The pain of getting me to see what I did when I was unkind and I punched down on someone because I was just in a crappy mood, that pain is important. I need to cool my jets, and I need to straighten up and fly right. Right? I need to straighten up, right? That pain is important. That pain I want to have. If I don't, I'm a worthless relationship partner, and I'm kind of worthless to myself too, because I can't hold myself to any kind of standard because I'm just too unwilling, and I never want to be that person. So my shame says, we're going to feel the pain that's necessary to feel. And if it's too much pain and the pain is worthless, the pain is just abuse, then we're going to burn some contracts with that nonsense. Yeah. So to know that when shame feels incredibly painful, take a look at that contract. Take a look at that message and know that you can burn it. And let's say it turned out it was a really important message. The burning of it will not erase it if it's a necessary one. It will come back, and the next time you burn it, you may learn new things, right? The next time you write down what's going on with that contract, you may be like, oh, this was about grandma. And I'm holding on to this because, right? Once you start working with the emotions in this way, you will no longer be a mystery to yourself. And the things you can find out when you work directly with emotions is worth $1 billion, except it's $1 billion that you got through worthwhile and ethical means. I know that doesn't happen in the real world, but in this world, in this imaginal world I just created, you can have $1 billion and not be a robber baron. You can just be someone who gives money to everybody and makes the world a better place. You can be that kind of billionaire. If you'd like to read about shame, about people working with shame and how to do it, one of my favorite books is Mistakes Were Made, But Not By Me. And this is about cognitive dissonance and motivated reasoning. This was written by Carol Tavris and Elliot Aronson. It is a classic. It will be at your library. And it's about how we come across something that we should feel ashamed about, that we're wrong, and how most of us work like a sled dog to not feel it and to not accept it and to not go there. And it's us fighting the necessary shame we need to feel when we realize that we were wrong. But I'm not blaming anybody for having trouble with shame, because if most of the shame that we're dealing with is shame that has been pressed upon us by outside agents who do not have our best interests at heart, or by magazines or influencers or social media or whatever, if that is most of the shame that we're carrying around, if most of the contracts we're carrying around are other people's abuse and attempts to control us, then I totally understand why our own intrinsic shame that comes up might feel overwhelming. But the problem isn't our intrinsic shame. It's that abuse shame. It's the blaming. It's the controlling. It's the impossible shaming messages and shaming contracts that make shame such an ugly thing when actually it's one of the most beautiful and powerful and majestic emotions we have. So you can see, how would you deal with shames and mistakes were made, but not by me? Read the chapters, but if you want to know how to deal with it more effectively, go to chapter 8. Now, what's interesting, and I've said this before, is that Carol and Elliot never use the word shame in this entire book, even though the entire book is about shame. So their suggestions may not be as strong as someone who knows what emotion they're working with. And that, of course, would be in the language of emotions. I also wrote a book about leaving my previous New Age career when I realized, to my great shame, that what I was saying and what I was doing and what I was standing for were inexcusable. And I needed to leave my career. I needed to go back to school. I needed to do a long period of self-reflection. I needed to make amends, feel remorse, feel ashamed, and fix that shite right now. It was painful. It was difficult. It cost me money. And I'm 1000% better for it. I would suggest it to anyone, but they should have someone to hold their hand while they do it. I didn't have that. And so missing the solstice is an attempt to reach out my hand and say, you think you got trouble? Imagine ending not only a whole career, but taking all your books out of print and disappearing and going back to school as an adult and losing everything. And there's a happy ending. There's a happy ending. I lost everything, but I gained everything when I listened to my shame and paid attention to it and treated it as a very, very, very important emotion. Now, there's also another book by Arlie Russell Hochschild, who's the queen of my heart. I love her work. I love just her life. And it's called Stolen Pride. She's been looking very closely at the movement on the right for the last 15 years, probably longer. And it's called Loss, Shame, and the Rise of the Right. And we're seeing a great deal of shamelessness right now. And the word shameless, if everybody is agreed that we all hate shame, then why does the word shameless have the effect it does? To say someone's shameless, that is not a positive thing to say about them. It is a way to say they are not reliable, they're not responsible, they don't feel the appropriate emotions, they don't behave appropriately. You need to watch out for them because they're not okay, right? Shamelessness is nothing to aspire to. And so when people say you should never feel shame, I understand why they say it. I understand the pain behind that. But we can't blame shame for other people's abuse. We can't blame shame, the emotion, for other people's attempts to get us to feel ashamed so they can control us, right? They're using our emotions against us. And what I say is, if you don't learn how to work with your emotions, someone else is going to work them for you. And in terms of this current political environment, oh, heck yeah, people are using shame against us. And they're using shame to control us. And if you have your own shame, you can very easily be like a cat who's just pushing things off the table. Here's some shame about being white or black or Mexican American or LGBTQIA++, right? And you can just fling that shame off. Oh, look, there's gravity for you. Feel the gravity as you fall off the table, right? People can attempt to shame you, right? And if you understand your own shame and you understand what your own chosen appropriate shaming messages should feel like, and someone tries to shame you from the outside and it has that kind of nasty, spiky pain on it, you'd be like, oh, hell no, nope. And even if it gets in a little bit, oh, I can burn contracts with that. And my entire emotional system, because I know how to work with it, can become my friend and my protector instead of a vulnerable victim of other people's need to control me. Yeah? It seems like working with emotions and empathy, oh, they're soft skills. First of all, if you ever say that to me, wait, hold on, I can't punch down, I have to be nice to people. I'll find a way to say something sarcastic, but in a loving way. I'll figure it out. But to say that an emotion, to understand emotions and empathy is a soft skill is such an unnecessary insult, because I might say, oh yeah, Tell me how you deal with a suicidal urge, if it's such a soft skill. Tell me how you deal with shame. Tell me how you deal with rage, right? Tell me how you deal with panic and anxiety, if these are soft skills. How soft are you now, right? These are hard skills. These are hard skills. And they're the best skills you can develop, because if you and your panic are friends and you can understand how panic works and what it does to save your life, then you become a survival expert, right? If you understand how shame works, if you understand what it does and what its purpose is in your life, then you become a moral and ethical being sort of effortlessly, because you and your shame are buds. You and your shame are like, let's go to the beach, right? You're friends, you're allies with your emotions. And when you're allies with your emotions, no one can control them, right? They might try to poke at them. They might try to frack around, right? But they won't get in, because you and your emotions are working together. And so when I say work with your own shame, let me underline own. Let me put it in italics. Let's bold it. Work with your own shame, your own chosen shame that you and your shame have agreed is livable, it's appropriate, it's about the present moment, and it's something that you both agree to and you can live up to, right? If you're friends with your shame and you guys have a good relationship and someone comes up with a message that's like, no one will love you until you're perfect, you and your shame will be like, that's the dumbest thing I ever heard. No, right? A bling! We're just the cat. We're pushing it off the table. No, that's ridiculous, right? But if you don't have any relationship to your shame and you run screaming from it because it's painful, and you don't know that the reason it's painful is because the messages and the contracts that it's working from, it's loyally helping you administer those contracts, you won't even know that your shame is trying to help because you agreed to that thing. And so that's now your moral and ethical core, and your shame is about that. You won't even know that your shame is working so hard, right? You'll just think shame is terrible. Yeah. And if you do, you will be vulnerable to further shaming and further control attempts, right? You will be vulnerable. And I don't want you to be vulnerable in that way at all, at all. And neither does your shame, if you and your shame have a conversation and a relationship where your shame can say, I don't think that's it. And where your whole body can say, no, that message feels terrible. I don't want to pick that up. That's new. That can go. Cat pushing it off the table, that's gone, right? To be able to work with your shame, your own shame, is one of the greatest gifts that you will ever give yourself. And it will help you develop a moral and ethical core that is understandable, that is based on your actual life and not some fake ass life where you're perfect and people love you because you're perfect. What? Who are those people? I don't even know. And you'll be able to breathe freely in the life that you've chosen, and listen closely to that poetry of your soul that has an ethical core and had it pretty much when you were born. We are all so different. We are all such unique individuals, though we're in the same species, obviously. Each of us has a different series of gifts to bring to the world, and those are a part of our moral and ethical core. If we don't have access to our shame, if we don't have a relationship with it, we're not going to be able to access ourselves, because our souls are going to be like the streets after a parade, filled with all manner of things that other people have discarded. And what I'm saying is, fling, get those off the table of your life, push them off, and come back to who you are. You can take an off-ramp from the shaming and controlling messages of others, and you can drop into a deep and healing ethical and moral conversation with your own soul, with your own core, with your own emotions, with your own empathy, and with your own shame. And it's crucial that you do in a time when everybody's trying to shame us for everything we do and everything we think and every blah, blah, blah. When you realize that you're wrong about something, go read Mistakes Were Made, but Not by Me. If you hear that, what is something that people haven't been able to hear? That America is a white supremacist country. It absolutely is. And if you're white, that may fill you with horror and so much pain because you don't even know what to do about it, right? And the answer is you study, you read, you feel your shame about it. You look, you listen to people of color. You listen to the people who are saying the thing. Maybe just on, YouTube. Maybe just on TikTok. Maybe just in books. Like if you don't feel like you have the strength of will or strength of character yet to be able to hear it. You're standing in your white body, having your own problems, having your own difficulties. Where's my beautiful wife? Where's my beautiful automobile? What does white privilege mean if I'm struggling, right? You will feel pain. But it is a pain that is worth everything because it helps you evolve as a person. It helps us evolve as a people. It helps us evolve as a country. It helps us face the very real damage that what I'm calling not white supremacy, because that's been weaponized. So if you say white supremacy, people will get all off their high horses. No, they get on their high horses or whatever, there's a high horse. But I call it the expectation of whiteness. And once you see it that way, yeah, you can see the white, don't say supremacy, but that's what I meant. The expectation of whiteness is massive, such that if you're in a white neighborhood and you see a black body, even though you yourself don't feel that you're a racist, it's in the structure of the culture. It's in the structure of our country. For instance, the state of Oregon, and I think other states as well, but this is the one I know because it's right above my state, was founded as a white homeland, right? Do they say that on the flag of Oregon? I don't think they do, but it was founded as a white homeland. It was very clear. It was very clear early on. And those shadows don't fall away. Those shadows are still there. I remember, I think it was in 2010, there was a Cheerios commercial. Do you remember it? And there's a little girl, and she's there with her mom, and her mom is talking about the heart benefits of Cheerios. And she's like, oh. And so her dad is sleeping on the couch, and he wakes up, and he's got a mound of Cheerios on his chest because, his daughter is putting the Cheerios on his heart. And it was a lovely commercial. It was just silly. Except the Cheerios company, was it General Mills, got a deluge of angry letters after this commercial aired because the mother was white and the father was black, meaning the little girl was biracial. And people lost their freaking minds over it. And I think the company took all these letters and made an art project out of them because they were just beside themselves, like, what are we seeing here? What we're seeing is the expectation of whiteness, right? That whiteness marries whiteness, and then the whitenesses have a whiteness child, right? That people couldn't even see the love in the commercial. They couldn't even see the comedy of it. They only saw color, and they lost their minds behind it, and they did shameless things. Yeah, they didn't stop to feel and ask themselves, why am I reacting so hard to this totally silly commercial? What is going on with me that I think that I should write to the Cheerios company and give them a piece of my mind? What is happening, right? That would be a painful conversation to have with yourself, but that pain has a purpose. That pain has meaning. That pain could change the world, right? But people weren't able to go anywhere near it. And instead, they dumped all of their unhealed issues, their white supremacy, their expectation of whiteness onto this poor company. I mean, they're not poor, right? General Mills is a massive company, but whoever was opening that mail had to deal with all of that vitriol, all of that shamelessness over nothing, over the fact of two people of different skin tones marrying each other and having a child. That's where shamelessness takes us. It's a place where thoughtlessness reigns and abuse reigns, and the true moral and ethical core of a person is erased. And that's what shamelessness brings us. We don't want that. We don't want that. I sure as hell don't. And if you need to take an off-ramp from anything, from that kind of behavior, from a career that you realize isn't working, from a relationship that isn't working, and you've tried and you can't, you have to let go, or a job where you've lost your soul and you've got to go, or a group that has become cultic and you've got to go. If you and your shame don't have a relationship, it's going to make it 1,000 times harder, because you won't know who and what you are, except it's just pain. And that pain has a purpose when it's time for you to go, when it's time for you to take an off-ramp, when it's time for you to question yourself very deeply about things that maybe you never even thought of before. It's like, why did I react so strongly to a little biracial girl? What is going on with me? And the answer to that question could take you into the depths of American culture. It could take you into history. It could take you into sociology. It could take you into anthropology. It could take you on so many beautiful journeys, instead of the one that you took, which is writing a filthy letter to the Cheerios company, right? There's so much happening today in psychology and pop psychology and the therapeutic culture. Oh my gosh, and the trauma healing industrial complex, where everybody wants you to feel good all of the time, where everybody wants you to down-regulate, where everybody wants you to breathe in joy and breathe out X emotion here, where everybody wants you to feel calm at all times and have, I don't even want to say this. I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say polyvagal, because that's going to start me on a whole thing, because that's not okay. But if everybody's calm, who's going to be left to feel what needs to be felt? Who's going to be left to feel the pain, the necessary pain that is required if you're going to do anything meaningful in this world, if you're going to challenge anything? Who will be left if everybody's calm and they're breathing in joy and they're down regulating from their panic or their anxiety or whatever, or their shame? Who will be left to take us to the next world? It will be the people who know how to work with their emotions, because they're not as scared of them. Yeah. So as you think about this world, about the troubles we're seeing, look at the emotions that are in charge. The external shaming of others is massive right now. And if you're not careful, you can get caught by it. Yeah. And if you are careful and you know your shame and you know how to burn contracts and you know how to listen for, is this a pain that is good for me? Like the pain of getting up and flossing, and the pain of calling myself out for being a jerk? Or is this a pain that has no purpose except to control me? Like the pain that says I will never be loved until I'm perfect. Learn to articulate with the shame that you feel, and to know where it came from, what its purpose is, and whether you agree with it now. It doesn't matter if you agreed with it before, if it's creating an unlivable pain. Yeah. You always have choices with shame. You always have choices. You can always burn that contract. And I also have a practice in the Language of Emotions workbook called renegotiating contracts, because there could be some parts of a crappy message or contract that you actually like, that it would actually work for you. So you can renegotiate those contracts. You're in charge. It's your emotions. It's your soul. It's your body. You can clean up the streets after the parade. You don't have to have all manner of things that other people discarded. You can have yourself. And there's never been a you in the history of ever. So why would you want to be anybody else? I'd rather meet you than some perfectly lit, perfectly audio engineered version of you. So work with your own shame and learn to identify when the shame has been placed on you as a form of control, because that's not okay. And your emotions will tell you. And if you help them, they will help you protect yourself from inappropriate and external shame that serves only to hurt you and control you. We don't want that. That's not okay. Nope. Nope. Thank you. Thanks so much for listening. I'll see you in the next episode.